You forgot me. Little girl confronted the vampire king at his wedding, holding their blood. The kingdom of Valerian had long been cloaked in twilight, the sun barely piercing the thick clouds that rolled over the mountains. Its forests were dark and endless, whispering secrets of lives long past, of shadows that moved with purpose and intention. At the heart of the kingdom stood a castle of black stone, jagged and imposing, crowned with towers that reached into the stormy sky. Within its walls, the vampire king, Lord Kalen, prepared for a ceremony that would mark the culmination of his reign, his wedding to the princess of the Eastern Isles. The castle glimmered with an unnatural light, reflecting on stained glass windows and polished marble floors. Servants moved like shadows, arranging flowers that seemed impossibly dark, as if the petals had absorbed the very night around them. The air smelled faintly of roses and iron, a reminder that in Valerian beauty and danger often walked side by side. Outside the castle gates a figure appeared. A girl, or rather a young woman, stood against the rising wind. Her cloak flapped like black wings, and in her hand she held a small glass vial that caught the fading sunlight. Her eyes were steady, pale, and unwavering, and her hair clung to her face as if the storm itself feared her. Her name was Alara. She had not come to the kingdom seeking revenge, though the king's past had been cruel. She had come for recognition, for the acknowledgement of a bond that time and power had tried to erase. And in her hand, she carried a piece of that past, his blood, drawn decades ago when she was just a child, taken in a forgotten ritual that had been meant to bind her to him forever. The gates opened slowly, though no one had called for her. It was as if the castle itself recognized her presence, the stone walls humming softly, echoing the rhythm of her heartbeat. Elora walked through the courtyard, her steps measured, deliberate. Servants and guards froze, their faces pale as they saw the girl who had been missing for so long, gone without a trace, spoken of in whispers. Inside the castle, Kalen prepared himself, adjusting his dark ceremonial robes. He had been the boy who once dreamed of kingdoms and promises, and now he was the man who ruled over them. His features were sharp, nearly immortal in their perfection, his eyes like polished onyx. But today, a faint unease tugged at him. A whisper, a memory that he could not place, made him glance toward the main gates at the exact moment a figure appeared. And there she was. Alara stepped into the hall, holding the vial aloft. The room seemed to shift around her, shadows deepening and light faltering. Every eye followed her, but no one dared interrupt her path. She did not bow, she did not speak, yet her presence carried a weight heavier than any crown. Kalen's breath caught, though he tried to remain composed. There was something familiar in her posture, something that stirred a memory he could not fully grasp. The child he once knew, lost to the winds of time, now stood before him, not as a shadow, but as a living, breathing echo of the past. "Who is this girl?" whispered one of the courtiers, voice trembling. Kalen did not answer. He could not. His mind raced, memories flickering like broken lanterns. A small hand in his, a promise whispered under candlelight, a laughter that had once filled these same halls. And then, nothing. Alara moved closer, her gaze fixed on him. She raised the vial slightly, letting the light fall across the deep red liquid inside. It shimmered unnaturally, as though alive. "Do you remember me now?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady, cutting through the murmurs of the court like a sharp blade. "Or am I just a shadow of a past you refuse to hold?" The hall fell silent. Even the storm outside seemed to pause, as if listening. Kalen's eyes widened, a flicker of recognition flashing across his face. But it was accompanied by confusion, by guilt, by a pain that he could not name. I, he began, his voice faltering. He had ruled for centuries, faced armies and monsters alike, yet he felt powerless in this moment. You don't remember, Alara said softly, almost sadly, because you chose to forget. But I remember. I remember you. Her words struck him like a blow. He could feel the weight of her gaze pressing into him, reminding him of promises he had once made, promises to protect, to care, to never let go. And yet he had let time and ambition strip those memories away. He had let her slip through his fingers, and now she stood before him, a living reminder of everything he had lost. Kalen took a step forward, drawn to her despite the fear and uncertainty curling in his chest. Alara, She held up the vial again, interrupting him.
This is your blood, she said. I have kept it all these years.
It could undo you, or it could remind you. You must decide which it will be. The court gasped, and the king's closest advisers whispered urgently, their words drowned out by the storm of emotions that raged between him and her.
No one had ever dared confront Kalen like this.
No one had ever challenged the Vampire King with truth and courage in the same breath. Elara stepped closer, her hand trembling slightly, though her eyes never wavered. "You were not always a king," she said softly, "and I was not always a shadow. There was a time when we were something more, but I still in you, and I still remember." Kalen's hands curled into fists, his body tense. He had been trained to command, to dominate, to crush any challenge before it could grow. But this was different. This was not a threat in the usual sense. This was a wound he had buried, a truth he had avoided, and now it bled into the present. Why did you leave?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. The words felt foreign, almost wrong coming from his lips. But they carried centuries of regret, a longing he had denied himself for too long. "I did not leave," Elara said, her voice steady but tinged with sorrow. "You forgot me. You forgot the promises you made, the hand you held so tightly one night, the vow you swore to keep me safe. And so I waited, for the day you would remember, or for the day I could remind you." The king's eyes burned, and for the first time in many decades he felt vulnerable. Power meant nothing here, authority was meaningless, and the trappings of immortality could not shield him from the truth of her gaze. Elara lifted the vial again, letting it catch the light. The red liquid gleamed, a symbol of all that had been lost, and all that could still be reclaimed. "You have a choice," she said, her words slow and deliberate. "You can see me, truly see me and remember who you were, or you can continue to forget, and we will both live with the emptiness you created." He wanted to reach for her, to take the vial, to grasp some connection to the past that had haunted him like a ghost. And yet fear held him back, the fear that if he did, he might undo everything, including himself. Elara's eyes softened, just for a moment, and in that softness, he saw the child he had known, the innocent trust that he had betrayed. Her hand was steady, but her heart carried centuries of longing. "Do you remember me?" she asked again, the words a whisper now, almost drowned by the wind that rattled the windows. Kalen's chest tightened. His mind reeled with the fragments of memories. Laughter, warmth, nights lit by candle flames. Promises that had seemed eternal. And somewhere deep inside, behind the armor of centuries, he remembered her. Not as a memory, not as a shadow, but as someone real. Someone who had waited for him, against the tide of time. I do," he said finally, his voice breaking, trembling with a mixture of awe, fear, and remorse. I remember you." Elara's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile, and the air seemed to shift. The storm outside raged on, but inside there was a fragile stillness, the kind that precedes change, the kind that whispers of redemption and reckoning. The court watched in stunned silence as the girl who had been lost for so long confronted the Vampire King with nothing but truth, courage, and a vial of blood. No swords were drawn, no magic unleashed, yet the room crackled with tension more potent than any spell. Kalen stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers, and in that moment, centuries of distance, power, and fear seemed to collapse. He reached out, trembling, drawn to the connection that had been denied for so long. Elara's hand quivered, but she did not step back. Instead, she held the vial high. letting it glint like a warning and a promise at the same time. "If you touch this," she whispered, "everything will change, not just for you, but for both of us." The king's hand hovered over the vial, torn between desire, fear, and the weight of his own memories. Every instinct told him to take it, to claim what had been lost. But every lesson he had learned as a ruler warned him that some power came at a cost too great to measure. And yet, he could not resist. The storm outside flung the castle doors open, the wind carrying the scent of rain and distant lightning. The candles flickered and danced across the walls, shadows stretching like long-forgotten regrets. The moment was suspended, a single heartbeat between past and future, memory and reality. Elara and Kaelin stood apart, yet closer than they had been for decades. The vial of blood shimmered between them, a bridge across time, a test of trust and courage. The court held its breath, unsure whether they would witness reconciliation or ruin. "Do you remember me now?" she asked one final time, her voice firm, soft, and unyielding all at once. Kaelin closed his eyes for a moment, tasting the weight of her question, the depth of his own regret, the longing he had buried under centuries of power. When he opened them again, they were filled with a storm of emotions: fear, awe, and something far more dangerous: hope. I do," he said again, firmer this time. "I remember."
I will not forget you again.
And in that moment, as the first drops of rain splattered against the black stone of the castle, a fragile bond began to stir, fragile yet unbroken, a reminder that even in darkness, some lights refuse to die. But outside the castle gates, in the shadowed woods, unseen eyes watched them. Forces older than the kingdom stirred. The storm was only beginning. And Elara, holding the vial of blood, knew that the real test, the test of trust, power, and redemption, was yet to come. The castle was quieter now, but the shadows seemed thicker, moving with a life of their own. Rain hammered against the tall windows, sending thin streams of water down the black stone walls. In the dim light of crimson candles, the vast hallways of Valarian looked like rivers of shadow, winding endlessly. Kaelin led Elara through the corridors, his hand brushing along the polished marble as though seeking balance in a world that suddenly felt unsteady. The courtiers and servants watched from behind doors, whispering among themselves, yet none dared step forward. No one had ever confronted the vampire king like this before. Elara kept her gaze on him, steady and unwavering. She did not speak, and yet every step she took seemed to demand acknowledgement. The vial of blood rested carefully in her hand, a small but heavy weight of history and power. Finally, Kaelin stopped before a room at the end of a long corridor. It was the private chamber he had not entered for decades. The air inside smelled faintly of old parchment, incense, and something metallic, a lingering trace of past rituals. He motioned for her to enter, though his eyes were wary, haunted by a memory he could not name. "You wanted to see me alone," Kaelin said, his voice low, as if speaking any louder would shatter the fragile thread of time. Elara nodded. "I need you to remember everything," she said softly. "Not just the moment you forgot me, but the days before, the promises you made. You cannot hide from yourself here." Kaelin closed the door and stepped back, his dark robes rustling. He studied her, really studied her, for the first time in centuries. She had grown into a woman of strength and purpose, but there was still a faint echo of the little girl he had once known. And it hurt him more than any battle ever had to admit it. "I don't know if I can," he confessed, his voice raw, almost human. "I have ruled for so long, I've buried parts of myself. I thought I could forget. I thought it would protect me. But now I see I only lost you." Elara's lips pressed together, holding back a sigh of both sadness and relief.
"I waited for you, Kaelin. I waited for the boy who promised he would never leave me, even when the world was cruel."
And I could not forgive the man who forgot me. Kaelin felt the words like a dagger and a bomb at the same time. The centuries of pride, power, and fear felt useless here, in this small, dimly lit room facing the truth he had tried to escape. She held the vial closer to him. This blood, it is more than a memory. It carries what you gave me as a child. It carries a curse, but also a chance. You have to choose. You can face yourself and remember fully, or you can continue to hide behind shadows and power. But if you choose to hide, there is no going back for either of us. Kalen's hands trembled slightly, though he tried to mask it. A curse? He asked, voice low. What do you mean? It is a bond, she said, her voice steady. The blood you left with me holds part of your soul, the soul of the boy who cared for me. It was meant to protect me, but when you forgot, it became a shadow. A shadow that waits, that grows stronger with time. It is tied to you, to us. If we do not face it, it could consume everything. Only the rain against the windows broke the quiet, a steady drumbeat, like the ticking of a clock counting down time they could not afford to waste. Kalen looked at her, and for the first time he saw not just a woman, but the weight of history, the burden of all he had lost, and the fragile hope she still offered him. Show me, he whispered. Ilara carefully uncorked the vial, letting the deep red liquid shimmer in the candlelight. She did not pour it, not yet. Instead, she held it between them, a symbol of trust and danger, of memory and power. Close your eyes, she said softly. Let the memories come to you. Let the blood guide you. The world blurred at the edges, and suddenly he was no longer in the castle chamber. He was a boy again, laughing in the candlelit hallways of his childhood. He was holding a small hand, making promises he had meant with all his heart. He saw her face, bright with trust and innocence. He remembered the warmth, the joy, the bond that had seemed unbreakable. And then the memory shifted. He saw himself taking power, making choices that forced him to grow distant, to hide the boy he had been. He saw her standing alone, waiting, holding on to a vial of his blood as he vanished into darkness. Pain lanced through him, sharper than any battle wound, a mixture of guilt, loss, and longing. He opened his eyes, breathless. Ilara was watching him, her face a mixture of hope and fear. Do you remember? She asked. I asked. I do, Kalen said, voice shaking. I remember everything. I forgot, but I see it now. I see what I lost. Ilara nodded, her hand brushing lightly over the vial. You cannot undo the years, she said gently. But you can begin again. We can begin again, but only if you are willing to face the curse and yourself. The king swallowed hard. And what if I fail? He asked. What if I cannot bear what I see? Then you will know truth, she said, her voice firm but gentle. And sometimes truth is the first step toward redemption. Kalen's fingers hovered over the vial, drawn to it despite the fear in his heart. The air in the room thickened, as if the castle itself held its breath. He could feel centuries of power and ambition pressing against him, demanding control, but also urging caution. And yet, he could not resist the pull of memory, of connection, of the boy who had once believed in her. Ilara's eyes softened, and for the first time she allowed herself a small, fragile smile. Do not fear what you feel, she whispered. You are not the monster you think you are. Not yet. But you must choose. Now. Kylan closed his eyes again, steadying his breath. He could feel the pull of the blood in the vial, the way it seemed to hum with life and history. He could feel the threads of the past intertwining with the present, binding him to Ilara in ways he had never anticipated. Finally, he touched the vial. Instantly, warmth spread through his chest, a strange, overwhelming sensation that made him gasp. Memories surged, visions of every choice he had made, every life affected by his reign, every smile and tear he had forgotten. And in the center of it all, her face, patient, unwavering, waiting for him to remember. Tears welled in his eyes as he met her gaze. I feel it, he whispered. Everything. The boy I was, the man I became, and you.
I see you. I cannot change the years, but I remember you.
Alara's hand hovered near his, trembling slightly. Then you understand, she said softly. The curse is not just blood or magic. It is the truth of what we were and what we could be. You must face it fully. Let it teach you. Let it change you. Kalen nodded slowly. The weight of centuries pressed down, but for the first time he did not resist. He allowed the memories to flow, allowed the truth to pierce through the armor he had built. And with every passing moment he felt himself shifting, becoming more than just a king, more than just a shadow of the boy he once was. The storm outside raged louder, lightning illuminating the room in brief, silver flashes. The castle walls trembled with unseen power, the air thick with magic and history. Kalen felt the surge within him, the stirring of something he had not felt in decades. Hope. Alara stepped closer, holding the vial with care. It is beginning, she said. You can feel it, can't you? The bond, the memories, the curse awakening. Yes, Kalen said, voice low but steady. I feel it. I feel everything. And I will not run from it. I will not hide. The air around them seemed to hum, alive with energy. Shadows twisted and danced, not threatening but observant, as if acknowledging the rebirth of a connection long buried. Kalen reached out, hesitating, and finally took the vial from her hands. The liquid shimmered between his fingers, alive with memory and possibility. Alara held her breath. This was the moment that could change everything. For him, for her, for the kingdom that had waited so long for light to return. Kylan lifted the vial to his lips, then paused, looking into her eyes. Are you ready for this? He asked, not as a king but as the boy he once was, the man he could become. I am ready, she whispered. Whatever comes, we face it together. And with that, Kylan drank. The warmth spread like wildfire, memories and emotions crashing into him. He saw everything, the promises, the pain, the loss, the waiting, and finally the path forward. The room seemed to glow with an inner light, shadows shifting and bending. For the first time in centuries, Kalen felt alive, truly alive, not as a ruler, not as a legend, but as a man who remembered love, loss, and the courage to face both. The curse has awakened, she said softly. It will not be easy, but you are ready. I can see it in you. You are not alone. Kalen nodded, eyes fixed on hers. I am ready, he said, voice strong, steady, because I remember, and because you never forgot me. Outside, the storm continued to rage, lightning flashing across the horizon. But inside the castle, in the quiet of the chamber filled with candlelight and shadows, a fragile peace settled. The first step toward redemption had begun. And yet, beyond the castle walls, unseen eyes watched. Forces older than the kingdom stirred, sensing the awakening of the curse and the rekindling of a bond that could change the fate of all. The true trial was only beginning. Alara and Kalen, bound by blood, memory, and hope, faced a future uncertain, but for the first time they faced it together. The storm outside Velaryon had not ended. It had only grown stronger. Lightning split the sky above the black stone towers, and rain battered the castle walls as if testing the strength of centuries-old foundations. Within the castle, shadows moved in strange patterns, stretching across the marble floors like living creatures. The air was thick, heavy with tension, magic, and unspoken truths. Kalen sat on the edge of a carved wooden chair in his private chamber, the vial of blood resting on the table before him. The warmth of the liquid still lingered in his chest, a pulse of memory and connection that left him breathless. Beside him, Alara stood, silent but steady, watching him with eyes that seemed to pierce through centuries of darkness. The curse, she said softly, breaking the silence. It has awakened. I can feel it in the walls, in the shadows, and in you. You must prepare yourself, Kalen. This is only the beginning. He ran a hand over his face as if trying to erase the weight pressing on him.
I feel it, he admitted. A storm inside me.
Not the storm outside, but something deeper, older. I see. Things I should not remember. Faces, voices, moments I thought I had buried. Elara stepped closer. That is the curse speaking. It shows you the truth of your life, the choices you made, the lives touched by your ambition. You cannot ignore it, or it will consume you. Kaelin clenched his fists. He had ruled Velaryon for centuries, faced enemies and commanded armies of darkness, yet this flood of memory and emotion was more terrifying than any battle he had ever fought. And yet, he could not turn away. I want to face it, he said finally. I want to see everything. I want to remember fully. Ilara's hand brushed his arm lightly, a gesture both comforting and grounding. Then you must trust me, she said. You must let the curse guide you. I will be here. You are not alone. Kaelin nodded and took a deep breath. Closing his eyes, he focused on the warmth inside him, the pulse of blood that carried both his past and hers. The room seemed to grow darker, the shadows deepening, stretching along the walls and ceiling, and then the visions began. He saw the boy he once had been, laughing in candlelight, chasing Elara through the halls of the castle. He saw the trust in her eyes, the small hand in his, and the promises he had whispered that he could not keep. Each memory was sharp, almost too vivid to bear. And then the darkness came. The visions shifted, showing him choices he had made in pursuit of power, faces of people he had ruled over, allies turned enemies, and lives affected by his hunger for control. The weight of centuries pressed on him. Guilt, regret, and longing intertwined into a storm stronger than any lightning outside. Elara watched him carefully, her hand resting lightly on the table. "Do not fight it," she whispered. "Let it flow through you. Only by facing it fully can you begin to heal." Kaelin groaned softly, a sound that was almost a whisper. As the visions intensified, he saw the moment he had abandoned her, the little girl waiting with the vial of blood in trembling hands. The memory was sharp, the pain almost physical, and yet, in the midst of the sorrow, he also felt a glimmer of hope, a reminder that he was not beyond redemption. The shadows in the room began to shift more violently, moving along the walls and floor as if alive. The candle flames flickered wildly, casting jagged shapes across the chamber. Kaelin opened his eyes, and for the first time he saw them. Figures of darkness, not fully solid, hovering just beyond the edge of vision. The curse was awakening not only in him, but in the castle itself. "Elara," he whispered, fear lacing his voice. "What are those?" "They are shadows of the curse," she said calmly, though her eyes showed concern. "They are memories and regrets made visible. They will test you, Kalan. They will challenge your strength, your heart, and your willingness to face the truth." The shadows moved closer, whispering faintly, voices like wind through dead trees. "You forgot, you forgot, you left, you lost," the words repeated, echoing in the room, growing louder with each heartbeat. Kaelin's chest tightened, but he did not flee. He remembered the boy he had been, the trust he had once held, and the woman who now stood before him, unwavering. He took a deep breath and stepped towards the shadows. "I will face you," he said firmly. "I will not hide. I will remember fully, and I will take responsibility for all I have done." The shadows recoiled slightly, their whispers turning into a low, eerie hum. And then, one by one, they began to dissipate, leaving the chamber quiet once more, though the air still thrummed with power. Kaelin felt the warmth of the blood pulsing inside him, steadying him, grounding him. Elara stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did it," she said softly. "You faced the curse. But it is not finished. There are other forces, older, stronger, that will try to test you further. You must be ready." Kaelin nodded, still breathless from the intensity of the experience.
I understand, he said, and I will not fail.
I cannot fail, not now, not after all this time. Elara's eyes softened. Then we must begin the next step. The curse is tied not only to your blood, but to the kingdom itself. It will reach beyond this room, beyond these walls. We must find its source and confront it together. Kalen stood, feeling the weight of centuries pressing on him, yet also a strange lightness, as if shedding layers of darkness had given him strength. Then we face it, he said, together. The next morning the storm had passed, leaving the castle cloaked in a mist that made the towers appear as if floating in clouds. The courtyard was empty, silent except for the sound of distant waterfalls and the faint rustle of leaves. Kalen and Elara walked together, their steps echoing on the polished stone. The bond between them felt stronger now, tempered by shared memory and trust. Elara led him to the Hall of Ancients, a vast chamber filled with statues of past rulers and guardians of Valerion. The air was thick with history, and every surface seemed to hum with energy. This place holds the memory of the kingdom, she explained. It is tied to the curse. We must awaken it, not to destroy, but to understand. Only then can the curse be truly faced. Kalen stepped forward, feeling the weight of the chamber. Statues of kings and queens seemed to watch him, their stone eyes filled with silent judgment and expectation. He placed a hand on the cold marble, and the chamber responded. A soft light glowed from the statues, illuminating the intricate carvings and runes etched into the walls. "Do you feel it?" Elara asked, her voice low.
The energy of the kingdom itself?
"Yes," Kalen said, closing his eyes.
It's alive, like it remembers me.
And yet waits for me to remember fully as well. Elara nodded. The curse is tied to every choice, every action you've taken. It will show you what you must face, the darkness you must confront, and the strength you can gain if you trust yourself. The chamber began to shift, the light intensifying. Images appeared along the walls, not solid, but moving. Memories of the kingdom, of battles fought, of lives touched, of promises broken and kept. Aelin watched, his heart heavy yet resolute. He saw the little girl he once knew, waiting with trust and hope in her eyes. And he knew that he could not fail her again.
Elara!
He whispered.
I understand now. The curse, it is not a punishment. It is a reminder, a chance to reclaim what I lost.
Exactly.
But it will not be easy. The forces that guard the curse will challenge you, test your heart, and demand sacrifice. Are you ready for that? Kalen nodded, determination settling over him like armor. I am ready. Whatever comes, I will face it. Not for power, not for glory, but for us. For what we lost and what we can reclaim. The chamber trembled slightly, as if acknowledging his resolve. Shadows and light twisted together, forming shapes of guardians long gone, spirits of the kingdom who had watched over Valerian for centuries. They circled him, testing him, observing his courage and the bond he shared with Elara. Elara stepped closer, her hand brushing his. You are stronger than you know, Kalen, and you are not alone. We will face this together. The shadows paused, then slowly began to fade, leaving the chamber bathed in a gentle golden light. Kalen opened his eyes, feeling a calm he had not known in centuries. The curse had awakened, yes, but so had something else. The boy he had been, the man he could become, and the bond that had survived even the weight of time. But outside the Hall of Ancients, the mist of Valerion seemed to move unnaturally. Hidden eyes watched, forces older than memory itself stirring in response to the awakening. The true trial, the test of courage, trust, and love, was only beginning. Alara's voice was quiet, but steady. We have taken the first step, Kalen. But the journey is far from over. The curse will not rest, and neither will those who wish to see it consume us. Kalen took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of her hand on his. Then we continue, he said. Together, whatever comes, we face it. I will not turn away again. And as the mist thickened outside the castle, swirling with unseen power, the two of them stood side by side, ready to confront the darkness that awaited, bound by blood, memory, and a fragile hope that could withstand centuries. And so had they. The mist over Valarian's castle had thickened, curling around the towers and drifting through the halls like living smoke. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains, carrying a chill that seemed older than time itself. The storm had returned, stronger than before, as if the world itself sensed the awakening of the curse. Inside the Hall of Ancients, Kaelin and Ilara stood together, hands almost touching, their eyes locked. The chamber had become a convergence of light and shadow, energy swirling in patterns that made the air vibrate. The guardians of the kingdom, spirits of kings and queens long gone, watched silently from their stone perches, their eyes glowing faintly in acknowledgement of the bond that had survived centuries.
"The curse grows stronger," Ilara said softly, her voice steady despite the tension.
Its power is tied to the kingdom, to the blood, and to the past you tried to forget. We must face it fully, or it will consume everything. Kaelin's jaw tightened. I've faced it as far as I can alone, he said. Now it is time to face it together. Whatever comes, I will not hide. Ilara nodded, lifting the vial of his blood once more. This is the final step. The bond must be completed, or the curse will remain. But the process will test both of us. You must surrender to the memories, the pain, and the truth. Only then can redemption be possible. Kaelin reached for the vial. His fingers brushed hers, and warmth spread between them, pulsing with a force that was both frightening and comforting. Then let it begin, he said. I am ready. The moment he touched the vial fully, the chamber shivered. Light and shadow collided, creating shapes that twisted and shifted with a life of their own. Whispered voices echoed around them, not cruel or angry, but insistent, urging him to remember, to face himself, to accept the truth. Kaelin closed his eyes. The memories surged again, more vivid than ever. He saw the boy he had been, small and trusting, holding Ilara's hand, promising to protect her from the darkness of the world. Then he saw the man he had become, powerful and feared, surrounded by shadows of choices he had made, moments of selfishness and neglect, lives affected by his ambition. The weight of centuries pressed on him, but he did not falter. He focused on Ilara, on the woman she had become, on the bond that had survived despite time and distance. I see it all, he whispered. The mistakes, the loss, but also the chance to make it right. Ilara's hand rested lightly on his chest. You can do this, Kaelin, she said. You are not alone. The curse tests you because it knows you are strong enough to overcome it. The light in the chamber intensified, shining through the stained glass windows and reflecting in intricate patterns across the stone floor. Shadows twisted and writhed, forming shapes of people, creatures, and moments from Kaelin's past. They were not threats, but challenges, reminders of what he had done and what he had failed to do. Kaelin stepped forward, feeling the energy hum beneath his feet. I accept it all, he said, voice strong. The past, the mistakes, the pain, and the hope. I will not run from it again. The shadows paused. Then, one by one, they began to dissolve, leaving behind a soft golden light that filled the chamber. Kaelin opened his eyes, feeling lighter yet more alive than he had in centuries. The curse had acknowledged his courage. The memories, the regrets, and the long-held pain had been faced and embraced. Ilara stepped closer, her hand finally brushing against his. It is done, she whispered. The curse has recognized your heart. You have faced yourself fully, and now you can choose what comes next. Kaelin looked at her, the warmth of the blood still coursing through him. I choose us, he said, his voice full of certainty. I choose to protect, to remember, to live fully. Not as a king alone, but as someone who can love again. A soft wind stirred in the chamber, and the golden light seemed to respond, wrapping around them like a protective embrace. The guardians of the past faded into the stone, their duty complete, leaving the present to reclaim its place. Outside the castle, the storm began to calm. Rain fell softly, turning to mist that swirled around the towers like silver threads. The kingdom seemed to breathe, as if sensing that the darkness that had haunted it for centuries was finally being healed. Elora looked up at Kaelin, her eyes shining. "You are different," she said softly. "Stronger, yet kinder. The boy you were is still here, and the man you've become, he is not lost." Kaelin smiled, faint but real. "Because of you," he said, "you never forgot me, even when I forgot myself. That gave me the strength to remember." They walked together to the balcony, the castle stretching out before them. The mountains rose like silent sentinels, and the forests of Belarion glimmered with mist and silver light. Birds called softly in the distance, and the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, bathing the kingdom in a gentle golden glow. "This is the beginning," Kaelin said, his voice steady. "Not an ending, but a chance to rebuild, to remember, and to live fully." Together, Elara nodded, her hand finding his. "Yes," she said. "We face whatever comes next, together. The curse may have tested us, but it cannot control us anymore." For the first time in centuries, Kaelin felt free, not from his responsibilities, not from his power, but from the weight of the past that had haunted him. The memories, the mistakes, and the curse had been faced, and a new path had opened. One of trust, courage, and love that could endure even the darkest of shadows. As they stood on the balcony, the castle behind them and the kingdom before them, a soft wind carried a whisper through the air. Not cruel, not threatening, but filled with promise. A reminder that even in darkness light could be found, and that bonds forged through time, pain, and memory could endure forever. Kaelin turned to Elara, his eyes full of gratitude and hope. "We have survived the curse," he said, "and now we can live, truly live, for the first time in centuries." Elara smiled, leaning slightly against him. "We can begin again, together." And so in the quiet of the castle, and the calm after the storm, two souls bound by blood, memory, and hope took their first steps toward a future neither had dared to imagine. The kingdom of Valerian would remember their courage. The curse would no longer control their fate, and the bond between them, tested by time, trial, and truth, had been restored. But even as the light filled the castle, Elara and Kaelin knew that life would still hold challenges. Shadows may rise again, and the kingdom may face trials anew. Yet now they would face it side by side, stronger for the hardships they had endured, and bound together by something older and deeper than any curse: trust, courage, and the enduring power of love. The first dawn in centuries bathed Valarian in golden light, a promise of renewal, hope, and redemption. And at that moment the vampire king and the girl he had once forgotten finally remembered each other fully, past, present, and future intertwined, ready to face whatever came next, together,